When last you saw the K20 swapped S10K, we pulled everything out of it to get it painted Porsche Forest Metallic Green. Now, it's green, and everything has got to go back in. Why? Because Ben is under the delusion that his RX-8 can be faster than my S2000 around a racetrack, which means that not only do we need to put this thing back together, we've got to make it faster than before. While I button up some of the fiddly bits on the body to make the car easier to move around, Mark reinstalls the high compression K-Series engine. Then it's off to Wisconsin, to the shop that originally got this ITB monstrosity running, all the way back in 2022.
2 years ago, we were trying to make power. I think we had really only one goal, is to shoot for 10,000 RPM, I think, and we hit that. But it wasn't making the power we were really hoping for. This being ITBs, it's a K20. It's not like the common recipe that we would normally do, I guess, to get to like a higher power. So it was a little tricky. We kind of basically just got stumped. We made as much power as we could, 215 or something. You K-Series people, I'm sure, know that's probably like stock K24 power levels. So we're gonna try some new things this time. Try some maybe different cams and exhaust stuff, and yeah, we'll see what we can figure out. We're also gonna just kind of briefly check over everything else on the engine, make sure everything's still healthy.
We want to just make sure there's not something mechanically going on before we throw it on the dyno and get a base tune before we put the new cams in.
I like it. The paint it's a very different color than I've seen on an S2.
After the motor passed a timing, compression, and leak down check, I asked Andy to make a small cosmetic improvement and replace the red valve cover with a wrinkle black ASM valve cover, which will conflict with the Forest Metallic Green a little bit less. Also, while the engine was out of the car, I added a vacuum block pulling vacuum off the intake runners, which will allow me to have power brakes, as well as a vacuum source for a map sensor, which Andy is going to reference in Haltech to clean up the drivability a bit. Which it obviously needs.
Just on pump gas, we're gonna baseline it. It hopefully should make close to what it made last time, which I believe was just a pinch over 200. But that's also been 2 years ago, lots of changes. The engine's probably a little more broken in now, so well, see what happens.
Before I came up to Wisconsin, my buddy Andrew helped me fabricate an exhaust header, which was on the car originally from a 4-2-1 into a 4-1 header. This is different from the setup last time we dynoed the car.
Yeah, so that was a pretty good baseline. It makes really close to the same power it did before. I kind of wanted to like figure out some of this drivability tune stuff so we get a good base tune. One of the complaints I just had pulling this on the dyno is that tip-in. I'm sure some people have experienced this before, and even just a regular intake manifold, certain aftermarket throttle bodies where you try to like give it some throttle and nothing, all of a sudden it like breaks free and it cracks open. It makes it really hard to drive smoothly. Everything's very jerky. Well, with ITBs, you have 4 throttle bodies, and to crack all 4 open and break that vacuum, it feels like a sticky throttle body. I actually dropped our ignition timing really low, so it actually requires me to keep the ITBs open just a little more to get to our target idle speed, kind of create less vacuum in there so it's a little easier to like snap open the throttle body. But it's massive improvements. I can already like feel on the dyno, I can just like tap the throttle and set off smoothly. Where before it's like a big jerk, and I don't care how much power it makes. If you hate driving it, what's the point of us doing any of this? These are meant for our enjoyment. So we need to make them enjoyable to drive.
I could not agree more with Andy on this. The philosophy of making the S2000 more painless to drive, and therefore increasing the likelihood of me actually choosing to get into it, is what led me to install stock seats, stock air conditioning, go with an OEM style hardtop that still allows access to the trunk, and so forth. Anyways, with drivability sorted a bit, Andy gets to work on the next change, camshafts. When we first dynoed the S2000, we notably stopped making power right around 8,000 RPM, despite the car revving to 10. Many people noted that this likely had to do with the camshaft we selected when building the K20, the Drag Cartel 3.2. This cam is designed to only make power till about 8,000 RPM. For our application though, we needed something with a bit more lift and duration.
OG4s. So these are one of their bigger I don't know if it's their biggest cam, but these should help with the higher RPM, help flow some more. Hopefully we don't sacrifice too much low end, but I would assume we're gonna give up a little bit of low end. This being a K-series, you get cam phasing and VTEC, which are two things that help maximize your power band. I mean, you might hear a little bit of bump on the idle, but it's not that bad. Not very dramatic. That's usually a good thing. I'm predicting a little gain. I have hopes of like, wow, all of a sudden there's 20 horsepower. But I don't know if that's gonna happen. So that was at 30-degree cam advance. I dropped it down quite a bit from where it was. Before we had to run 50-degree cam advance. Blue is the old cams. I still have some more cam angle tuning to do, but it's definitely flowing a little bit better up top, but it's not like our, you know, missing 20, 30 horsepower.
We did find some of our missing horsepower, however, with the throttle. Andy noticed that the throttle position sensor was not reading 100% during his dyno pulls, so he decided to bypass the pedal entirely and try to pull manually to open the throttle bodies, which actually netted us about 7 horsepower.
If you want this thing to make power up near 10,000 RPM, I think we want to keep these cams in the car.
With the cams done, the easy stuff is out of the way. Now, it's time to try more dubious modifications.
We're trying a, basically another 4-to-1 header, but this one's like a long tube 4-to-1 header. It's some cheap, I don't even know where you found it. We modified it to make it work on a K-series.
The reason why I'm hacking this brand new piece apart is the heads are different between a F-series and a K-series. The F-series has many more bolts, as you can see, so obviously this 5-bolt flange won't bolt up. And the ports are slightly offset from each other. These outer two are basically a direct fit. A little bit of massaging left and right will get these two lined up, but these two are much closer on an F-series. So typically when I modify a OEM header, I cut these two and I can clock them both and then they'll line up. And that involves welding these two back and then welding everything to the flange. And then we can bolt a F-series header to a K-series engine.
We're gonna bolt it on and see what happens. I'm all for surprises, so I hope it just like makes a bunch of power. Do you remember me talking about when the AFRs, I could tell when it's gonna make more power? AFR goes real lean. It went real lean. The red is the new graph.
We found that unexpectedly, the extremely low quality $200 4-to-1 long tube headers I'd bought off the internet flowed in such a way that they removed a big power dip the short tube 4-to-1 headers had, to the tune of a 40 to 50 wheel horsepower differential in the mid-range, and they made the same horsepower in the top end. But as Andy started shaping the tune around this combo of stage 4 cam and stage Chinese header, power started to go up and up and up.
I think this header's working. The only thing that I can kind of explain is maybe the way the collectors were done. Maybe this new 4-to-1 was able to, you know, scavenge some of the exhaust pulses from some of the other cylinders. Yeah, it's making the most power it has since, and we're still on pump gas, so we're gonna try E85 tomorrow, and hopefully make some more power.
The following day started with removing the Acura RDX injectors that were on the K20.
The RDX are about 410 cc's, and we're already hitting about 78% duty cycle on pump gas. So on the 85, at our fuel pressure and everything, we should be able to support 280 horse on the 85. If if we get to that power level. That'll be a good problem to have.
Before we swapped from 93 octane to E85, Andy wanted to do a bit of experimentation.
Gonna make a little heat shield. We're getting kind of high on the intake temps, and I'd like to just block some of that heat that's rolling in from the radiator.
The makeshift heat shield was ineffective, and we fell short of our 221 horsepower record. Next, we tried some pulls without the air filter on, in case the filter was warming the air entering the engine. Whether it was air temp or air velocity, we did make more horsepower without the filter. This was really cool information. Not really super useful information because we have to run a filter, but interesting nonetheless.
Pretty good. I don't know. Time to try some E85, I think.
Last time we dynoed the car, ethanol fuel made a 20 horsepower difference from 93 octane, jumping from 195 horsepower to 214. It should be noted that we have already surpassed the E85 number from 2022 on pump gas by roughly 7 horsepower with the air filter still on, so our modifications have already made a difference.
We put some ethanol in it. We were at 12%. It's going up now. We're at E70. That's all she's got.
From the first time we had it on here, peak power was 215.
215, yep. So yeah, 20 horsepower really, which on an NA car is tough to find. The old 2022 was the that blue dark line. And it made all right power, 213.9. And now the orange is the new. And we really didn't lose much. I mean, there's a few spots down here where it kind of maybe does some different things. Actually gained a little bit here, maybe lost just a pinch here, but I mean from 55 all the way, we gained everything. And gained a lot on the top. I mean, this is probably mostly the cams. You know, we kind of did a few things to help promote higher RPM airflow. The bigger cams, and then a long tube 4-to-1 header. So, makes sense. Some pretty good gains, really.
And of course, for a more accurate test of what power we'd be seeing on the street, we did one more test on E85 with the filter on.
So yeah, I feel the sock's just maybe a smidge restrictive, and I also think it like soaks in the heat. Because intake temps, when I was doing pulls without the filter on, it would get to like 97. Now I'm at 112. I mean, ITBs aren't really known for making the best power, at least in this application. You know, there's maybe ways to make them work. For us, if we were just shooting for higher power, there's much easier ways. We've made this power with a stock K24, you know? So yeah, this is really just kind of a little bit of a science experiment to see what we can do with this combination of parts. Is it working the best? Probably not. It's probably the wrong combination, but we're just trying to make the best with what we have here. So I think we could easily probably make more power if we threw an RBC intake manifold on it, you know, 3-inch intake, get it nice cold air, K24 for sure. I'm sure we would have no problem making 300 horsepower with a built-up K24 and a good intake manifold. But that's just already been done. We're trying to do something a little unique and sound better.
With power sorted, Andy addressed another quality of life issue, power steering. Because the electric power steering rack of the S2000 references the RPM signal and vehicle speed sensor in the OEM dash, swapping to the Haltech IC7 requires that you manually feed the power steering rack an RPM and VSS signal. Is up 20 horsepower and driving great, so it's back to Virginia for myself and the S10K, and time to invest for the first time in my life in aesthetics.
So heretofore in our relationship, Seth, I've never really cared that much about having your very nice, very pretty titanium hardware because my cars never look that nice. I don't care about details, right? So rusty hardware, you know, like crap, mismatched hardware. It just needs to hold stuff together.
Yeah.
But now I actually have a car where a lot of attention has been paid to aesthetics. Yeah. It has a nice fresh paint job, and I think that I should have nice looking hardware. So I think we can just go gold hardware on like
all of it.
Anything we can access?
Yeah, anything that's visible, yeah. Well, let's knock it out.
Next is an interesting little mod we need in order to mount seat belts. The OEM 3-point seat belt retractors are mounted to the factory bulkhead, which was removed from my car in favor of a roll bar. In the interest of keeping this car track legal, I've elected to keep the roll bar in, but I'm not going to keep driving around on the street using 5-point harnesses because that's very dangerous. So my buddy Andrew came through to fabricate a little bracket and allow me to mount OEM seatbelts back in the car. With horsepower and safety sorted, the S2000 is very nearly ready to go do battle with Ben's RX-8 at the racetrack. All it needs now are some tires.
So you might have heard that Ben thinks that his RX-8 can go faster than my S2000.
Oh, I've heard that, yeah. I will be honest, I have not seen any updates on Ben's RX-8. I've only seen your S2000. And to be honest with you, I don't even think that RX-8 is going to run by the time it's race day.
I'm just calling you. We've got the car pretty sorted. We're making more horsepower now, but I need tires because right now it is not on track tires.
We'll get you sorted on NT01s, baby.
That would be awesome. And what I actually want to do is still run a relatively narrow tire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I've built it to be not a track weapon. I've built it to be like a motoring pleasure vehicle. And I think part of motoring pleasure is steering feel and slip angle. So if we go with a giant tire, it's going to numb the steering up, and it's like that car doesn't have enough power to get sideways with a giant tire. So
that's true.
I think a 235 square would be mint.
That would be money. That would be a very pleasurable tire.
Yeah.